welcome to LSB Feasters Radio Channel and Travel Corner. Today, we are featuring WFPG, 1450 Atlantic City, and we are going way back to 1968. The jock on the air at the time is Wally Karver. And now, if you know nothing about WFPG in Atlantic City, WFPG was one of the most popular stations in Atlantic City in the 50s, 60s, into the 70s. It had an MOR format, which stood for middle of the road. It was a popular format in the 50s, 60s, and kind of died off into the 70s. It was a station where you could hear news and talk and sports as well as music. You could hear some of the pop songs, though the softer ones of the time. You'd also hear standards like Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, Andy Williams. You could even hear some instrumentals and big bands. It was a mishmash of everything, which is kind of why it was called Middle of the Road. Now, WFPG was located on the Boardwalk in Atlantic City, which was a great location for any stars coming through Atlantic City. They would get them on the air. It was an interesting radio station. Even the calls were interesting. WFPG, which stood for the world's favorite playground. So let's give it a listen, and listen in this for some interesting stuff like CBS News from 1968 and CBS Sports Central USA with longtime sportscaster Win Elliot. And towards the end of the sportscast, listen for names you haven't heard in years like Pistol Pete Maravich when he was in college, also Lou Alcindor, who we later knew in the NBA as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Interesting air check. If you like what you hear, give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. And after you subscribe, smack that bell so you'll get alerted whenever we post something new, which is normally around 3 p.m. most weekdays. And if you like the intros to the video, let me know. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to keep doing them or not. If you think it's worthwhile, let me know and I'll keep going. If you think it's a total waste of time and you just want to get straight to the air check and cut me out, that's fine too. I won't be hurt. Just go ahead and say so below and I'll do whatever you want. So if you're ready, let's go back to 1968 with the Wally Karver Show on 1450 WFPG Atlantic City.
Whether morning, noon, or night, for prescriptions filled promptly, you can always call on Lincoln Pharmacy and Medical Supply, 1226 Atlantic Avenue in Atlantic City. And for any emergency, any sick room or convalescent item, an oxygen tent, wheelchair, or crutches, you can rely on Lincoln Pharmacy to have it and deliver it. Lincoln is on call 24 hours a day for oxygen rental service. Call 348-4444. Lincoln Pharmacy and Medical Supply, Southern New Jersey's Department Drug Store, at 1226 Atlantic Avenue. Next, CBS News, followed by Sports Central USA with Win Elliot. A couple of features here on WFPG's Weekend. This is Wally Karver. We'll see you again in 10 minutes. It's 5 o'clock.
This is CBS News in Washington. George Herman reporting. New York's Governor Nelson Rockefeller, under heavy pressure from moderate Republicans to get into the presidential arena, is holding a strategy session at his New York apartment, and CBS News correspondent Morton Dean reports.
At 812 Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, a group of named Republicans from around the country, 32 in all, are meeting at the behest of Governor Rockefeller. It is believed that on the basis of what he hears today, Rockefeller will be that much closer to a decision on whether to actively campaign for the presidency. But he said he won't announce that decision today. One surprise guest at the Rockefeller apartment is the 1964 GOP vice presidential candidate, William Miller. Miller, a conservative, told newsmen that Rockefeller has his wholehearted support. Miller splitting with the man who headed the 64 ticket, Barry Goldwater, who has endorsed Richard Nixon. Emphasizing the possibility that Rockefeller may enter the Oregon primary as an active candidate, was the appearance of Robert Price, a brokerage house executive who headed up the one major primary campaign that Rockefeller won in 1964, and that was Oregon. Morton Dean, CBS News, New York.
On the CBS News broadcast, Face the Nation, Governor Romney of Michigan said today that Rockefeller should enter the race quickly by declaring himself in the Oregon primary election of May 28th. Governor Romney said he still hasn't closed the door on the idea of working for Richard Nixon himself. Florida's teachers' strike, apparently all settled last Friday, has developed a new hitch. The Florida Education Association has asked the state's teachers not to go back to work Monday as planned until all the county school boards in Florida agree to accept all the striking teachers back on the job without any reprisals. The association reports that school boards in several of the counties are showing openly hostile attitudes toward the teachers. In Pittsburgh, striking teachers voted to end their 11-day walkout after a county judge agreed to conduct a collective bargaining election. In Delano, California, farm labor organizer Cesar Chavez ended his 25-day fast in a Roman Catholic Mass celebrated in the city's community park. Among the participants, Senator Robert Kennedy, who flew in by a special chartered plane, explaining that he wanted to show respect for what he called one of the heroic figures of our time, Cesar Chavez. Senator Kennedy, by the way, also appeared to Britons on a BBC interview today and severely criticized the Johnson administration's conduct of the war in Vietnam, but he said that although he had seriously considered entering the presidential race this year, he had decided against it. In Vietnam, American headquarters has declined comment on Washington reports that General Westmoreland wants 206,000 additional American troops. All such information is highly classified, said the American officers. General Westmoreland helped activate a new American command in the two northernmost provinces today to improve the setup for the expected test of strength just south of the demilitarized zone. And the enemy subsequently launched another of those destructive probing attacks, destroying tons of American supplies and ammunition with artillery and rockets. More news in half a minute.
True or false? Children are more susceptible to meningitis than adults. This is Charles Kuralt. Tomorrow on Dimension on Health, I'll answer that question in a quiz on meningitis. Also on Dimension tomorrow, Mike Wallace talks with Elliot Janeway, author of Economics of Crisis. Mr. Janeway discusses his views on how the Vietnam War is affecting our economy at home. Be listening for Dimension on Health and Personal Close-Up tomorrow on this CBS radio network station where what you want to know comes first.
Czechoslovakia's President Antonin Novotny, one of the last of the Stalinist leaders of the Soviet satellite countries, is reported today leaving Prague for an extended stay at a health resort. Some think it the first step towards resigning for reasons of health. Novotny has been under heavy pressure to quit and has been deprived of much of his power. And today, more than 3,000 Czechs marched to the grave of the late Czech foreign minister and democratic hero, Jan Masaryk, who has been a communist unperson for 20 years since his death. Czechoslovakia's new party leader has allowed the rehabilitation of Masaryk and his father Tomáš Masaryk, who created the Czech Republic. A new era of freedom in Czechoslovakia and signs that Poland and other satellites want some for themselves. That's the latest. This is George Herman in Washington.
What happens in the world during the night? Find out weekday mornings with Dallas Townsend on the World News Roundup over the CBS Radio Network station.
WFPG Steel Pier in Atlantic City, 5 minutes past 5 o'clock.
CBS Radio. NBA Eastern basketball champs Philadelphia, and it rained in Carolina. Win Elliot, CBS Radio Sports Central USA. It's the Philadelphia 76ers, winners of the NBA Eastern Crown. Boston lost its game to Cincinnati 137-111. And at the New York Garden, Wilt and his friends kiboshed New York 119-108, and that did it. And his coach, Alec Hannum, a little excited.
I couldn't be happier. This is the second Eastern Division title in a row for me, the third for the Philadelphia 76ers, looking with great anticipation to the playoffs and hopefully another world championship.
Gee, I don't know who's going to stop you, Coach. That's quite a club you got there.
Last year, I stated that I thought the Philadelphia 76ers was the strongest team ever in the history of professional basketball, and I still feel the same thing is true. We established all kinds of records last year, winning 68, losing only 13, and now here we've cinched the Eastern Division title again. We've got tremendous power on the front line with Wilt Chamberlain, I think the greatest pivot man that's ever played the game of basketball, and certainly the most ominous scoring machine in the history of the game of basketball.
According to a new government report on nutrition, 50%, yes, 50% of American families studied have diets that fall below recommended levels in one or more vitamins or other nutrients. 20% are rated poor, below 2/3 of these levels. You can ensure your diet by taking one-a-day brand multiple vitamins or Chox chewable vitamins every day for all the vitamins you normally need to take. One a day or Chox for family vitamin insurance from Miles Laboratories.
Duke got the Duke as the 16th and last choice for the National Invitational Basketball Tournament. With a 21-5 record, Duke was chosen over North Carolina State. Play underway in New York on Thursday. Duke was in the tournament last year. They were beaten in the opening round. The NCAA tournament looks more and more like Houston and UCLA in Los Angeles on March 22nd. Last night, Elvin Hayes Loyola of Chicago with 49 points, and UCLA joined the AA pack, winning the Pacific 8 crown, beating Southern Cal. Next Friday, then, in the East, North Carolina and unbeaten St. Bonaventure, Columbia and Davidson. The Mid-East at Louisville, Kentucky and Marquette. East Tennessee and the Big Ten winner of the Iowa-Ohio State playoff. The Midwest at Wichita, Louisville and Houston. Texas Christian and Kansas State. The West at Albuquerque, UCLA and New Mexico State, New Mexico and Santa Clara.
If you were picking the 1968 All-America basketball team, which of the many great college stars would you select? Well, this week in the new issue of Look magazine, you can see whom the experts have picked and compare them with your own choices. Yes, Look's eagerly awaited annual feature, the 1968 All-America basketball team, is at your newsstand now, and it's chock full of stories and pictures about the season's top performers. As always, the Look All-America team consists of the nation's 10 leading players, and this year it's really loaded with talent. You'll read in Look about UCLA's great Lou Alcindor, the fabulous Elvin Hayes of Houston, sensational sophomores Peter Maravich of LSU and Calvin Murphy of Niagara, and a host of other stars. Look also selects the leading performers in each section of the country, and you'll want to see the players singled out in your area. Get the lowdown on the 1968 All